Welcome. I'm Harold Holzer, director of Roosevelt House, and most of you know that I consult with NYC and Company for my longtime friend and former boss, Emily Rafferty. I'm also director of Roosevelt House, so I get to welcome you to my home base. For those of you who don't know, this is not only a functioning college institution, a public policy institute, a human rights institute for undergraduate students, it's also a historic home, a tourist attraction, one hopes. It is the home that Sarah Delano Roosevelt built for Franklin and Eleanor as a wedding present in 1908. It came with a slight caveat that once she saw how small the dining rooms were, and that's the room where we had coffee, Sarah removed the partition between them. It became all one house, and as Eleanor put it, for the next 25 years, she was on our side of the house at the least expected moments. We call it the first New Deal. And the actual New Deal was consecrated in this house. 3 floors above, Franklin D. Roosevelt agreed to do Social Security and the social safety net. This was, I hate to say it, the Trump Tower of 1932-33. 4 months in residence here without going to Hyde Park, and it's where the transition from the Hoover to the Roosevelt administration took place. So we're thrilled to have you. Brian Grimaldi reminds me that I must tell you that for the benefit of those board members who could not attend the breakfast, we are taping this session so that it can be made available on the NYC and Company internet. And with that, let me introduce the chairman, Emily Rafferty.
Good morning and welcome. Glad to see so many of you here. And I know I'm joined in welcoming by Fred Dixon, our CEO, and other members of the staff of NYC and Company. So as most New Yorkers know, Sam Schwartz is one of the country's most accomplished experts in the field of sustainable urban transportation policy. From 1982 to 86, he served as the city's traffic commissioner under Mayor Ed Koch, and then went on to become chief engineer for the next 4 years of the newly organized Department of Transportation. It's fair to say that during the 1980s, Sam really revolutionized the way New York looks at, handles, and plans for its car and truck traffic. Of course, Sam forever may be most famous for inventing the term gridlock. And for years, he has written a weekly advice column on traffic for the New York Daily News as Gridlock Sam. He currently serves as president and CEO of Sam Schwartz Engineering, a firm specializing in local, national, and global transportation planning. His projects have included consulting on the reconstruction of the World Trade Center, the 2nd Avenue subway, and the planned streetcar connecting Brooklyn and Queens. He also consulted for us at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where I served as president at the time, and I'm proud to say that he also served as the Ted Keel Transportation Fellow last year here at Roosevelt House. And I can tell you it was a proud moment to be able to serve the city with Sam when he worked for the Met as we rebuilt the plaza over there and had to move traffic, bus stops, taxi stands, people, garbage, you name it, we had to move it. Not to mention 7 million visitors a year. In addition to working on the current modernization of LaGuardia Airport, God bless you, he has also served as the chief advisor and strategist to the governor on the new plan for congestion parking, which of course is why we're here today. So Gridlock Sam, over to you.
Thank you for that introduction, Emily. Traffic is tough to handle in New York City, but I must say, Emily, the community board on the other side of the Met Museum was also pretty tough and sometimes harder than the traffic. So you did an incredible job, you and Harold at the Met, in transforming that. And that was wonderful to see. And thank you for my small role in that, but I really did appreciate that. And I also am happy to be back here at Roosevelt House, where I taught last year. And it was just a wonderful experience, and the students here are fantastic. And we've had a wonderful time. Today I'm here as a private citizen. While I did work for government for 20 years, and I've been in the private sector for 27 years, and I've done a number of other things, I'm really a private citizen that's been pushing congestion pricing for many, many years. I started working when John Lindsay was mayor, and we had gotten very far with congestion pricing in the 1970s. And nothing could stop it, in fact, except an act of Congress, and that's what stopped congestion pricing in the 1970s. In 1980, after the transit strike, and that's when the word gridlock was heard publicly, and as soon as I uttered that, the media went wild with the word, and it did catch on, and I should have trademarked it then, but I didn't think about that. But we ran the city for 11 days without buses, without trains, without even the Long Island Railroad and Metro North for the first few days of the strike. And we implemented a number of things, and people said, let's try to do that post-strike. So we did introduce a form of congestion pricing post-strike, got it through the city, and I was promptly sued by the AAA and the Garage Board of Trade, which, by the way, practices congestion pricing at their facilities. And there may be some people that run garages here. And they won the lawsuit that the city didn't have the authority. Fast forward, Mike Bloomberg makes an attempt at congestion pricing. Most of you probably are familiar with that. He doesn't get very far with it because the state requires state authority, and the state doesn't even hold a vote on it. And lots of reasons, and we can talk about that perhaps afterwards. So what I've been doing for a number of years now is spending time with the opponents to the Bloomberg plan and seeing if there's an alternative out there that they could support. And I helped develop something called Move New York. And Move New York, again, is I'm not actually part of it because Move New York is a not-for-profit, but it's the plan that I helped develop that's part of the Move New York plan. So there is the Move New York plan, which I'll describe to you. There is the Fix NYC plan, which back in October, I was invited to be part of the governor's panel to develop the Fix NYC plan. So there are plans out there that you keep hearing about, and today, tomorrow, or the next day, everything that I'm telling you may be old news because the budget is being developed right now in Albany. The Senate has its plans, the Assembly has its plans, the governor has his plans, and we could talk about what's happening with that maybe in a question and answer period later. Let me see how this works. So Move New York, Fix NYC. Move New York is grassroots organizations, Transportation Alliance, Riders Alliance, and a number of other groups are spearheading that, but now REBNY is very active in that, and a number of other businesses have stepped up and are supporting the Fix NYC advisory work. And why is this important right now? Why is it being moved along? Well, there are a few reasons that I can give you, but one is, I'm not sure why the Subway on Time came out incorrectly over there, but the Subway on Time performance has gone from 88% down to 68% between 2010 and 2016. And you may have read in the New York Times that in January this year, it was 58% on-time performance. That's awful. You cannot run a city like that. So the city can't function. If you've traveled to any other city that has a transit system, any world city, you'll find they're in the high 90s. Even at 88, which was good for us, we were the worst system in the world of major world cities. But the other thing that's changed of late is that traffic has gotten so bad that it's the worst it's ever been. And it's dropped from 6.5 miles an hour in Midtown to 4.7 miles an hour, and it looks like it's going down even further. There are days when the average speed is 3 miles an hour, and many of you have probably experienced sitting in the back of a cab or some car running out of it, or in a bus and stuck in traffic. And I think that's part of the difference. All of a sudden, we're finding people that said, sure, you have a transit problem, but that's not me, I'm above ground. Now the people above ground are screaming too. So I think that's part of the change, why we've gotten a bit more movement now, and it's also the fact that Andrew Cuomo, MTA Bridges and Tunnels, have removed all the toll booths. So people now understand electronic charging, and you don't need toll booths. So those things have created a bit of an impetus that has changed, and it only changed in 2017 and really the second half of 2017. So the Move New York plan is about correcting these inequities. This is what we have right now, which is a crazy pricing scheme that was only developed, and I won't go too much into the history, Harold would love it, but it's really due to three men, Mayor William Gaynor in 1911 removes the tolls from the East River bridges. Then along comes Robert Moses, builds 7 bridges and 2 tunnels in New York City, charges tolls, and the tolls are still there. And then we have Nelson Rockefeller, who comes along in 1968 and creates the MTA. And the MTA then siphons money the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority has put into the MTA, and they take money out of the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority and give it over to rail transit, to the transit system. More than half the money in tolls right now goes to the transit system. But we charge people that can't use transit very much on the Throgs Neck Bridge or the Whitestone Bridge or the Verrazano Bridge or the Rockaways. It's as if we put them all in the wrong places. Sure, we have 2 tunnels, the Midtown and Battery, that makes sense, but the others don't make sense. So spending time, again, in the areas where people were opposing the Bloomberg plan, it's mostly the outer parts of the city, the outer parts of Brooklyn, the outer parts of Queens and Staten Island. And you could see the toll policies there make absolutely no sense. They're way too high. So the Move New York plan says, let's wipe the slate clean and let's approach this in a smarter way, not just based on history. And if this was a group here and we were all working on setting tolls and we knew that a portion of the tolls has to go to the subway system, has to go to heavy rail coming into Manhattan Central Business District, would we pick the Throgs Neck Bridge and say those people should be paying for it, or the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, or the Gil Hodges and Cross Bay Bridge? I maintain the answer to that is no. We would say the people that do have the option, people going to the Central Business District, people that have lots of subways, those are the people that should be charged, and we're not charging them on all the facilities. So this is the Move New York plan. It's a toll swap. The green shows you all the bridges and bridges that would have their tolls sliced, and by 45%. And if you look at them, you could see that they are in the outer parts of the city. So it coincides with the opposition to the Bloomberg plan. And it wasn't developed necessarily for that. I think it is good planning, but it also has a great political impact of lowering tolls on many of these facilities. And this is one of the things that brought a number of people, including the AAA that had sued me in 1980, and a number of opponents, legislative opponents, to the Bloomberg plan saying, we could sign on if you lower the tolls in these areas. So that's the basis of the Move New York plan. And it also includes a surcharge on taxis based on distance and time, which is how you pay for a taxi today, but it would be a congestion surcharge for Manhattan south of 96th Street, no other area. Same thing with Uber, Lyft, and the parking tax rebates. Really, no one is talking about that, so it doesn't pay to talk about that. The bottom line right now for Move New York is $1.5 billion in net revenue. We can bond that money relatively quickly and generate perhaps 15-to-1 ratio, about $15 to $22 billion in capital spending, unless we want to go do pay-as-you-go on it. 30,000 recurring local jobs a year, and they are, I stress local, because it includes track workers, people working on the signals, people working on the highways, and other types of things to improve transit operations, and a 15 to 20% reduction in travel time. Distributing the revenue on the Move New York is different than other plans, and that is 3/4 of it goes to transit, but 1/4 goes to roads and bridges. And those two things, the toll swap and some of the revenue going back to roads and bridges, is what brought a number of the opponents to the Bloomberg plan signing on to this plan. So that's the Move New York plan. And then you heard about the governor's plan, Fix NYC. It has an almost identical area for the congestion pricing portion, and it uses pretty much the pricing scheme that was proposed in Move New York. The pricing scheme in Move New York is what you are paying today at the Midtown Tunnel, at the Battery Tunnel, is what you would be paying at the newly tolled facilities. And that is $5.76 each way or $11.52 round trip. So the area is almost exactly the same except for one difference, and that is the tolls would not be placed on the 4 East River bridges themselves. The tolls would be once the tire hits the streets of the Central Business District, you get charged. If you bypass the Central Business District on the FDR Drive, for example, you take the Brooklyn Bridge, ramp to the FDR Drive, you never touch the Central Business District, you go north to 60th Street, beyond 60th Street, you're going, and this is a common thing, what if I'm going to the hospitals? You go exit at 61st Street, you don't have to pay. You go up to the Bronx, you don't have to pay. If you come across the Queensboro Bridge and you go north of 60th Street, you could take the upper roadways, dumps you at 62nd, 63rd, or even the lower, and come across, there's no charge. So that's the geographic difference between Move New York and Fix NYC. And it's Fix NYC that right now people are talking about much more than Move New York. So Fix NYC is what's on the agenda at the moment in front of the Assembly and the Senate. The charge would be an average of $11.52. It would be charged from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., and there's discussions whether to do it just Monday to Friday or 7 days a week, and what the hours would be. It might go beyond those hours, but that was the recommendation of the panel. The minimum hours would be 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. the business day. Could be more during the peak hour, less off-peak, no toll booths, and so that's the congestion pricing portion for private cars. The second part is the area south of 96th Street, identical to Move New York, and a charge for for-hire vehicles. For-hire vehicles are Uber, Lyft, taxis, and under Fix NYC or Move New York, they were treated pretty much the same. On the Move New York, it's distance and time-based. On the Fix NYC, it would be a drop anywhere between $2 to $5. If you're in Brooklyn, if you're in Queens, or if you're in Manhattan north of 96th Street and you never enter the Central Business District, no change whatsoever. However, if you're in the Central Business District or you enter the Central Business District, there would be an additional charge, or south of 96th Street in this case. So right now, the Assembly bill, which you may have heard of, the first version does not have anything about the caught-in charge, meaning the cars, the trucks, or anyone entering. It only has a charge for the for-hire vehicles, the taxis, the Ubers, the Lyfts, and the first round that came out was $2.75. And today you may hear a different story than I'm telling you right now. Tomorrow may be another story. So April 1st is the deadline for the budget, and people are saying that that's pretty much the deadline. There is a legislative season that continues beyond that, so some things can happen, but we don't expect too much to happen this year because 2018 is an election year for all the people that will be voting on this in the Assembly and the Senate. So right now, it looks like the low-hanging fruit are the for-hire vehicles, Uber, Lyft, and others. You may have seen Uber, which is a big supporter of congestion pricing. They've taken out ads for it. It would be ironic if they didn't, because they practice congestion pricing with their surge pricing. Right now, they're taking out ads saying it has to be everybody or nobody, and they're fighting very hard on that. So the Senate was silent on this issue. I don't know what's happened in the last day or two, and the governor has said, and I've spoken to the governor, that he is pushing for, he recognizes the legislation for congestion pricing is, the success of that is probably close to nil this legislative season, but he doesn't want to lose any time, so he said he's going to be pushing for the infrastructure, for the process to start for congestion pricing. So 2019, when people suddenly develop some courage, they can vote for it. 2020, there'll be no courage. It's courage is every other year that we see in the legislature. That's about where we stand in terms of the legislation over there. So the governor would like $200 million in the budget. That's what he is seeking. And the $200 million would allow for the beginning process, investigate the best way to charge people, whether it's an app, whether it's E-ZPass, whether it's some other technology, license plate technology as London does. It would start that process, start the environmental impact process, which includes a lot of community involvement on it, start the preliminary process for concept design, and then should the environmental impact statement be successful, should there be enabling legislation in 2019 to begin construction of the system for operation. You'll hear 2020, I don't believe it's 2020, but 2021, 2022, there'll probably be lawsuits. Things always take longer than we expect them. So the earliest you'll see congestion pricing for general traffic, I predict 2020 is a low probability, 2021, 2022 is a higher probability, but it's anyone's guess. It's a bit of a crapshoot right now whether the legislature will vote for it. I'd say the probability of Uber, Lyft, Via, the yellow taxis, Get, Juno, and 777 and whatever all the services, there's a high probability of that. But there's also, I'd say, a high probability of a lawsuit that's filed pretty quickly on it. So that's about where we stand with this. The Fix NYC suggested that we begin the process of improving transit right now, improve enforcement of traffic, the placards, I can go into all of these, but I think you're less interested in this, and the zone pricing, begin the early work on the zone pricing installation, start with the for-hire vehicles, implement zone pricing for trucks. And then we did not on the panel, even though I was an advocate for it, but the panel did not agree to take a look outside Manhattan at the toll structure. But I was delighted that the governor came out with a tweet. In January, tolls must be fair, shouldn't vary widely. We need to reduce the costs for out-of-borough bridges. And a lot of the legislators are maintaining that position. Senator Lanza, Staten Island, was a supporter of Move New York. He has said he won't support Fix NYC, and he's key in the Senate. And Flanagan is watching what Lanza says over here. He has told the governor he won't support it unless the Verrazano Bridge tolls are sharply reduced. So there's a lot of horse trading that's going on right now. Why is traffic so bad? I'll just quickly go through it. We've never seen a rise in any transportation service this fast. You could say that the yellow taxis have been overtaken by the TNCs, the Uber, Lyft, Juno, Via, Get. In almost no time, in just a couple of years, taxis have been with us for over 100 years, and there are now more people riding these services. They focus almost entirely on the central business district. Manhattan, well, all of Manhattan, and the hot areas of Brooklyn and Queens. So that's not a citywide transportation service that's been increased, and it's been increased where already the transit's most plentiful, traffic is the worst, and the highest income people live. So it's questionable how great this was. It is for some individuals, but how great this was for the city as a whole. And where do they go? They're coming out of the subways and buses more than coming out of private cars. Very, very few are coming out of private cars. And the equity issue, the mayor raised the equity issue. So where is the mayor today? He was talking about the equity issue, so we happened to show that the equity issue is not in fact the case, that people who are car owners who have a choice are making $45,000 a year more than people who are transit captives. The lower income people and Community Service Society, a big supporter of the mayor, came out with a report supporting congestion pricing, saying it's the low income people that will benefit. Will some people have to pay more? Will some people feel hurt by this? Absolutely. I am hearing this all the time. People corner me on the street. Remember, I'm a private citizen doing this on my own, but people imagine that I have a neighbor who says I'm destroying her life because she won't be able to visit her grandchildren, that I'm putting up a wall at 60th Street on this. So I'm hearing a great deal of complaints. Feel free to complain. I'm used to it. And we have editorial support from virtually every newspaper. If you read the Daily News every day this week, has been hammering it at home. The Times had another editorial this week. We were delighted. Poughkeepsie Journal has come out. Newsday, which are from Long Island, Poughkeepsie Journal from the northern suburbs, is in support. So we have suburban support, as well as all the papers within New York City. We have support from the right to the left. So we can go into why the right supports it, why the left supports it. And we looked at other options. The other options just aren't going to fly this legislative season, too much to read. I'm not going to go into that. Lots of civic support on it. Some of these were very important to get the mayor on board. Environmental justice organizations worked very hard to get the mayor. I wouldn't call him on board at the moment, but he has softened his tone. So whatever, it's a yin-yang, whatever Cuomo comes out for, the mayor attacks and vice versa. So we had that going on in the summer and in the fall, and now the mayor has softened his tone a good deal on it. So I think the mayor won't be a problem going forward. And this is actually from Scott Reckler. Scott Reckler is the chair of the Regional Plan Association. I am a board member of RPA. He's also the CEO of RXR Realty, and he is on the MTA board. And this was a slide he put together when we went to meet with the New York Times editorial board together a month ago. And so he talks that this affects everybody, and we're in a state of crisis, and this is a win-win. And we've got to start investing, raising money, and we've got to fix the MTA, which is part of his plan going forward. You may have heard that the federal government is now coming in to investigate why things cost so much at the MTA, and I think a lot of people welcome that. I'm one of them, as long as it's a reasonable and objective study. And there's no better way to address our affordability challenge than without a reliable, robust public transportation system. And with that, I conclude, and I'm happy to take any questions going forward. Okay.
So thank you very much for sharing this with all of us, because I know there's a lot of questions in the room. Talk to us about what is happening in other major cities. I know in London, there was a lot of talk about congestion pricing, and there was a lot of concern about what it would do. What has been the ramification in the results that we've seen today, and what are other major metropolitan areas doing to address this?
London has congestion pricing. I was very jealous of London when they did it, because they did it in 2003, and the reason I'm jealous, it was invented here in New York City by William Vickrey of Columbia University, who went on to win the Nobel Prize in 1996. New York City tried so many times before that. So I was jealous of London. London put it in immediately, an improvement in traffic speeds, reduction in congestion. Over the years, what London has done is improve transit, bus lanes, pedestrian ways, bicycle lanes, a number of other treatments. Today, the speeds are about the same because they've used up a lot of street space, about the same that they were prior to congestion pricing, with 53% fewer vehicles. So even if we were at the same slow speeds, but we had half as many vehicles, we'd have half as much pollution, half as much horn honking, half as much energy, half as much carbon footprint and other things. So it's been a win for London. Every place it's been put in, people have opposed congestion pricing to begin with, unless it's been an authoritarian regime like Singapore. So in Stockholm, there was opposition. They achieved agreement to test it for 6 months and then put it to a public referendum. So the opposition was generally 60-40 opposed. They put it in for 6 months and then took it out, put it to a referendum, and it flipped. It was about 60 supporting it, 40 opposed. And Stockholm has kept it in. Milan has it. Singapore's had it. A number of other cities have it around the world. Other cities are all looking at ways of controlling traffic, and congestion pricing is one of them. Today, in the legislature in the state of California, there is a congestion pricing bill that is gaining momentum for the Bay Area and for Los Angeles. And Los Angeles is studying congestion pricing, and Los Angeles is doing more for transit than any city in the country. They just passed the Measure M, a sales tax that is generating $120 billion for transit. So you're going to see a different LA. LA 100 years ago was a great transit city. Got destroyed. Go see Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I'll tell you the whole story. Good history lesson over there. LA 2030 will have a really good, robust transit system. We don't even come close. If I did a bar chart on what LA is doing and what we're doing, we're practically in the negative column, and they're soaring. The Bay Area, the same thing. Seattle passed a $53 billion bill. They're looking at congestion pricing. Portland is looking at congestion pricing. Oregon, the whole state is looking at authorization for congestion pricing. On highways in Texas, highways in Florida and other places, they are using a form of congestion pricing on highways. So you pay more to go faster. So if we think we're a world city and we want to keep up with the cities of the world, we've got to start doing something to improve our transit system. We've got to do something to solve our congestion problem. And I see the only measure that attacks both congestion and improves transit is congestion pricing. Yes.
Hi, I'm Fred Grabstein with the Hotel Association. As a lifelong New Yorker, I have no issue with the plan you're proposing. But I would like to suggest an addition, which is, I'd like the thought that all the visitors, domestic visitors who come to New York would feel more welcome. I'm not sure what the cost of this is, but if we were not to charge tolls to visitors from outside the tri-state area that are coming to New York, just as a marketing plan to say that, you're most welcome and we will not charge you when you come to visit our great city, I think that might be worth consideration.
Every group I go in front of suggests an exemption. So the position that and surprisingly, it's always their industry or their self-interest. What I'm doing, from my point of view, no exemptions. Let the elected officials deal with exemptions. They're really good at that. So, I got hammered over why am I not doing it with people with disabilities. Well, right now at the Port Authority, if you arrive in Newark Airport, you're a tourist coming into New York, or you're a person with disability, or you're driving a truck, you pay a congestion pricing fee. And people in New Jersey have not stopped coming into the central business district. $12.50 during the peak hours, $10.50 off-peak for cars, much more for trucks. If you live on the borough of Staten Island, you've been suffering from congestion pricing, if you call it suffering, for many, many years. It cost every single entry point in the borough of Staten Island. So, and without giving them any transit, which is really a mistake over there. All right, I'll let you then ask the next question. I saw you had your hand up.
I'm Lynn Kelly. I run New Yorkers for Parks. So I have sort of a wonky technical question that maybe you could explain in terms of public process. And the reason I'm asking is clearly building your public consensus and getting people and groups lined up to participate in a future public process is going to be key to passing the legislation, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
piece of it.
Yes.
What I'm trying to understand is I get the legislative piece of why that has to happen to enact this. Are there city actions, like will there be an accompanying ULURP or a city DEIS, or like what's the process by which, if you wave your magic wand, we'll be able to call to action, come to this meeting, sign on to this document, review the environmental impact statement, come to scoping, all those wonky technical things that are a necessary part of the process?
It's called an EIS. You said it yourself. Yes, people recognize that an EIS will be needed, and that's why I said let's start the EIS process. Let's go out to community boards. Let's hold hearings in every borough. Let's do all of that to get people hopefully to support, but also to hear what people say on how the plan could be approved, or they oppose it and why they oppose it. All of that is part of the process. If it's a state action, it'll probably be a state EIS. I don't think it'll be a federal action requiring a NEPA. I don't think it'll be a city EIS, but it might be. I don't know what the process will be, but I suspect it'll be a state environmental impact process. And we look forward to that. Yes.
Hi, I'm Judy Bird with Bird Retail Group. I just had a question. I'm hoping to follow the presentation appropriately, but under both of these plans, it seemed like there was traffic. There's no charge for traffic that's going up the FDR.
Right.
Does that apply to West Side Highway as well?
No.
No. So is there concern about the congestion on the FDR, if this is implemented?
It's already a bypass for all those people. The same people are avoiding tolls right now. They're not taking the BQE. Many of the people are taking the Gowanus into the BQE, and then they could stay on the BQE and head all the way north to the Triborough and they will pay a toll. So some people are avoiding the toll by taking the Brooklyn Bridge. So we have a lot of them already on the Brooklyn Bridge. But yes, we are going to change congestion levels in different places. So this is one that the Fix NYC panel came up with. I'm not too worried about adding congestion. We already have a lot of congestion on the FDR Drive. So you're going to reduce some of the FDR Drive traffic that gets off at 23rd Street, that gets off at Houston Street, that gets off at Center or 42nd Street. So I think there'll be a balance. It's not one of the places that I'm terribly worried about added traffic, but yes, we should look at all of that. Queensboro Bridge is probably a greater area where people will stick with the upper level and not go down on the lower level to avoid the tolls. Yes.
Kenneth Martin from the Job Center. With respect to the congestion pricing, there's hesitation as to the future and how that will affect commerce coming into the city. And will there be direct impact on the larger carriers, the over truckers? Are we going to look at some point addressing what time they come in, level pricing for that?
For truckers? Or?
Yes.
Yeah, so first of all, I thought you were talking about business impact. Business impact in London's been positive. Business impact in Stockholm has been positive. Wherever it's been implemented, there's a positive impact. Not that there aren't people that say this hurt my business. You will find that. But overall, the objective studies that I've looked at have said that it's positive. In terms of trucks, should we go to nighttime deliveries or other things? That's been around since the 1960s. The problem is New York City has a lot of small businesses, still does. And that means small businesses that like to close at night and go home to sleep, they would have to have people there in the middle of the night. And so it hurts small business if you direct it, if you order it, that it has to be nighttime deliveries. However, can you have a pricing scheme that encourages that? Sure. The Trucking Association actually came out in support of the Move New York plan because more of their trucking activity is on the Throgs Neck, the Verrazano. Coming from the west, there are 45 states or so to the west. Truckers come from those states, come across the Verrazano, go out to Brooklyn, Queens, Nassau, Suffolk County. They do the same coming across the Throgs Neck. Their tolls get slashed, and some of the money goes to roads and bridges. So truckers are not big supporters of Fix NYC because Fix NYC doesn't include that. We're hoping it does, because Fix NYC is only a plan that is now being changed by the legislature, and we hope that it will include the lowering of tolls and bring those people on board. We're also hoping that a chunk of it, some portion of it, will go to roads and bridges. That would also bring a lot of the opponents on board as well. We'll see how it plays out and how it's playing out right now. Yeah, Charles.
Hi, Charlie Flakeman with the Schubert Organization. So just looking at the funding for a second, it appears that all of the new funds generated come from New Yorkers, and a reduction actually in the cost for New Jersey residents who are using the Lincoln Tunnel and the George Washington Bridge. So could you just speak for a second about the equity of that relating to taxpaying New Yorkers?
When I started doing this, probably 2010, particularly this plan, and I started making the rounds, and I said, you know, I've got to get out there. So I included the Holland and the Lincoln Tunnel as part of this. And at that time, I was given some very good advice. They said, you can have a tough enough time with one governor. You want to deal with Chris Christie? So their advice to me was, let sleeping Christies lie. And that's pretty much what I did. For the George Washington Bridge, they would have to pay coming down at 60th Street. So I am getting complaints from people from New Jersey or Rockland County or other places that say we come across the George Washington Bridge, we pay a toll at the GW, and then we come down and we have to pay another toll at 60th Street. Well, a lot of those people in New Jersey pay a toll on the New Jersey Turnpike, the Garden State Parkway, and then they pay another toll when they use any of these facilities. So double tolling is not unusual. People coming down the thruway, for example, will pay a toll and then pay another toll on it. But I do get complaints from New Jersey. My answer to that as a New Yorker is this will encourage people to stay doing north-south traffic on the other side of the Hudson River. And I'd rather them be on the other side of the Hudson River than come in through the tunnels than be on the upper west side or the upper east side to do their north-south travel. But ultimately, we should address the Lincoln and the Holland Tunnel. Right now, the pricing there is almost identical to what we're suggesting. It's We're suggesting $11.52 on average. It's $12.50 at the Holland Tunnel, Lincoln Tunnel. During the morning peak, $10.50 off-peak. So it's almost identical to that. We're not hitting them with a double toll. So do things get a little better for people from New Jersey? Some may see less congestion when they come across, but they will still suffer at the Holland and Lincoln. And the people at the GW are not going to get that break of driving down into the central business district. Yes?
Matt Gold with Delta Airlines, and while I won't ask for exemption for LaGuardia Infinity, our hubs there, customers coming in, I'm curious, and it's kind of back to your funding point, in the either plan, are there protections for setting for transportation versus public transportation versus road investment have their funding set percentages, or a situation where political whims change, like with the Tiger grants nationally, we have rural taking more, different priorities based on the leaders in charge.
Yeah. So on the Move New York, it is a set formula, 75-25. On the, meaning 25% for roads and bridges, 75% goes to transit. On the Fix NYC, 100% goes to transit, nothing for roads and bridges. Remember, these are plans that are now being dealt with in Albany as we speak. So whatever I tell you today might be different. You'll say, Sam said this yesterday, and tomorrow it's totally different than that. But those are the two plans. One is 100% transit. The other one is 75% transit, 25% roads and bridges. The Tiger grants, which are a federal program, it was sad to see that urban areas, New York was left out entirely. New York City, nothing. And I believe there were a number of submissions for it. In rural areas, probably 57 to 60%. And it's the old highway building that we saw that's been a failure for so many years, and nobody has learned from that. And there is virtually no federal transportation program to speak of other than current funding levels. Yes?
You mentioned London and Stockholm. Have you investigated any cities, let's say in Asia, like China and India? And where I'm going with this question is peak congestion times here in Manhattan, let's say between Thanksgiving and New Year's, when you get overload. Have they done anything, and what they've done in the adopted year?
The most sophisticated one right now is in Singapore. And Singapore, what I showed you was a flat fee. My dream is that it be dynamic. And you brought up the holiday season. Yes, it would cost more during the holiday season. I would make it even more dynamic than that. And that would be if you drove just one block to 59th Street, why do you have to pay the whole fee on it? And so it would be the amount of time and the amount of space that you use. If you want to come in and see the tree, at the Rockefeller Center tree, Christmas week, and drive your SUV with all your kids at 1 mile an hour pointing out the tree, you know, maybe that should be $25 for that block or $50 for that block. So where we're heading is the technology is so good to be dynamic. When I started out on this, I showed a dynamic system. I lost, the elected officials I totally lost. So I've been doing, KISS, keep it simple, that's how I've been keeping it right now. But I do hope that once authorization is there, we do a smarter system than what I showed you here today. And we make it dynamic and seasonal, and we're seeing that on highway lanes in Virginia, and Texas, and California, and Florida, and other places. Yes?
Yeah, you touched on something. Will driverless vehicles impact your plan?
Okay. Thank you for throwing that out. I have a book coming out later this year called No One at the Wheel. It'll be out this fall. And please pick it up. It'll tell you all about driverless vehicles, what happened with the Uber crash. But yeah, driverless vehicles. The book was originally titled Driverless Vehicles, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The publisher came up with another title, which I actually think is better, No One at the Wheel. But that's, invite me back again to talk about driverless vehicles. We have a real headache. If you think Uber, Lyft, and others created a headache, wait till driverless vehicles come. So there were a couple of hands. Yes?
You just kidded around about the $25 surcharge to come in and look at the tree. I'm a small business owner in Times Square, and that's not really funny because let me just tell you how the city has eaten away about getting people to come into the city from the outer boroughs and from New Jersey. I've watched this for 35 years in business, just every year go down. Even theater. Theater does not get, the real theater goers do not come into New York anymore. I mean, we have a real problem here. This is like a nail in the coffin. Everything's gonna go up. Trucks come in, they're gonna charge more money, it gets passed on to every vendor. Why don't we talk about the real problem in New York City, which is what the DOT has done with bike lanes? Why don't we talk about how they've slowed traffic down in the city? Why don't we ever address any of this? All I hear about Lyft drivers, Uber drivers, that's really not the problem. We have 18,000 city bikes. So for 9 million people, we all suffer because of city bikes, for 18,000 people to ride their bike to work, maybe.
Okay.
So why don't we ever address anything like this that's going on? We put plazas in, we put trees on Broadway. We took the parade from down Broadway to down 6th Avenue. I mean, we've made all these concessions, and just you see less and less people coming into New York City.
And, you know, when we had a little discussion upstairs, it really did bother me when you talked about how people from boroughs, and you may be able to tell from my accent where I'm from, Brownsville, Brooklyn, and Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. And so it did resonate that people can't afford theater tickets, people can't afford to come in. So that is an issue. What I say in terms of the truckers are generally being supportive because they will move around more quickly. Instead of 5 deliveries, they can make 6 deliveries. As a former cab driver, I used to do 30 trips a day, 30 trips a shift. Now they're down to 21 to 23 a shift because traffic is so bad. In terms of studies, I scientifically study this. The big drop in speeds were not when Jeanette Sadekhan came in and started doing the bike lanes. There was a drop, but the dramatic drop coincides with the introduction of for-hire app-based vehicles, more closely related. A second study that hasn't been done, which should be done, and sure, there are shortcomings with the DOT, no one has studied the small deliveries that are occurring right now. You need a ream of paper and a truck arrives at your door to deliver the ream, or, you know, $5 worth of groceries or whatever it is. So there are a lot of causes to it. The bikes are a small part of it. The bigger part of it that I've studied is the for-hire vehicles, and what we have not studied are all the deliveries. But it is worrisome if people from the boroughs cannot come in and enjoy themselves in Manhattan. Yes?
Yes, Nick Faker, Starbright Floral Sign. I run between 7 and 10 commercial vehicles in the city. I'm not a special interest in this question. However, once the commercial vehicle is in the city and it's paid to come in, how long does it get to stay before it gets charged again?
The whole day, the whole period.
Well, what if it lives in the city and my trucks never leave the boundaries and we're always inside?
Yeah, that's one of the failures of this plan. You would escape under the cordon zone. All right, I made one person happy, 2 people happy. There's somebody right behind you.
Andrew Ritchie, New York City Hospitality Alliance. We represent restaurants and nightlife establishments throughout the city. Follow up actually what this lady said. In other cities that have implemented congestion pricing, has the cost of goods that are sold to small businesses increased, decreased, stayed the same?
I believe they stayed the same or decreased. And because of the speed of traffic. Because if traffic moves faster, and if you're talking about a charge that for a trucker coming in under the fixed NYC would be $25 for the whole day. The trucker coming in over the Midtown Tunnel may actually pay less if they go back and forth to Long Island City. So I think it's been pretty much a wash in terms of the cost of deliveries. If we speed traffic up significantly, then the cost of deliveries goes down on it. I'm sorry, Lynn was next.
I'll be really quick. So part of me thinks maybe it's time to open a business on 66th Street, just because I'm thinking the drop off of people wanting to avoid. But then the reverse is also true. Has any thought been given to residences or existing businesses, like on people that would be on the edge, and how to mitigate the traffic that would then potentially be avoiding going into the central business district? I'm just curious how to handle that.
Again, there's a lot of worry that people right at the edge are the ones that are going to suffer because people will drive all the way and then at 65th Street or so, look for a parking space, probably If you try to on-street, it'll take you 30, 40 minutes if you're lucky. And you go off-street and you pay $40 or so for it. It's going to be a lot more than the $11.52. And you're then going to have to walk to the subway, pay the $2.75 or a little less if you have the MetroCard, monthly MetroCard on it. People don't do that. Where people do shift modes is further away. If they're 10 miles away, 15 miles away, they don't drive 15 miles, stop, get out of their cars, then get in the subway, park, get in the subway, and then go down. However, one of the things that we've said, since this is so common a question, people in Brooklyn are worried, people in Queens are worried, people on the borderline of the Upper East and Upper West Side. If you want residential parking, I'm not a big believer in residential parking permits. If you're worried that people will inundate your community, we're not opposed to residential parking permits. It's a requirement that you live in the community to park on those streets during the day, maybe during the night too. So we've always been open to it, but it hasn't happened. Yes, Jim.
My question is, I understand that we want to lessen traffic flow in Manhattan, but equally saying, who are we affecting? If we're stopping people from Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens coming in with their own personal cars, how are they supposed to get to work? How are they supposed to travel? So something right now is bringing them in. So do we have mass transit set up, right, to handle all these people who have chosen to take their cars, pay an additional fee, sit in traffic for hours to get in here? When you go to the boroughs and you want to travel, you're waiting in jam trains and buses, just to get in. That's phase one. Phase two, most of the people that came to this meeting today traveled in an Uber or a Lyft or something else, right? So the cost of that is going to increase. The people that are in that industry, and I am in the transportation industry, it helps me with less traffic. That I can run my buses a lot faster, a lot easier. I can save time, I can save gas. I understand that. But I'm looking at the forward thinking ahead. If you stop people from bringing their car in, what other means are you giving them to get in? That's the first thing.
Okay. And that's why the Fix NYC panel said, start working on the transit system before the cordon zone goes in. Start improving transit. If we went from 68, or January was 58% on time, to 88%, which is still terrible, there'd be enough room for people on the subways. What happened in just about every location is 85% of people did not change what they do. And a good percentage of them like getting to work faster, not sitting in traffic, and they don't see it as a burden. Today, everybody from New Jersey is paying, everybody from Staten Island is paying. Today, people coming on the Midtown Tunnel pay, the Battery Tunnel. So paying is not unusual and hasn't stopped people from coming in. So preventing, which people have used that word to me, we're not preventing people from coming in. A ban, Paris is now talking about a car ban, and a few other cities, we're not talking about that at all. And under Lindsay, we did talk about a car ban, and it was the hospitality industry that blocked John Lindsay in 1971. A little history over there. So we think, just as you pointed out, your business will move more quickly, that people will move more quickly, and there is a value to time. So we only have to deal with about 15% of the people. Of 15% of the people, some of those people are driving through the Central Business District now, not doing any business in the Central Business District. And we have the data at the Holland Tunnel, at the Lincoln Tunnel, they drive right through. An example that I use in a number of other presentations, I'm a trucker at the Barclays Center, I'm a driver at the Barclays Center, or around that area. I've got big deliveries, I'm a big truck. I could take highways that are built for me, the Gowanus. I could go out the Verrazano Bridge, built for trucks. I can go out the Staten Island Expressway, the Goethals Bridge, and be at Newark Airport. If I'm a 5-axle truck, I'll be charged $96. However, if I decide to drive on Flatbush Avenue to the 108-year-old creaky Manhattan Bridge that's cracking as we speak, with 4 subway lines going by, and then rumble across the streets of Chinatown and Soho and go out the Holland Tunnel or the bigger trucks, the Lincoln Tunnel, $0. So our pricing policy right now is the bigger you are, the more we want you to drive into Manhattan. So we encourage people to go through the Manhattan Central Business District. That's the group we'd like to get rid of the most on it. And this will do it because now there's no incentive to drive through Manhattan because you're priced at every entry point. So I believe if we are smart, we get the transit system back up to where it was a few years ago, we will have the capacity to handle the 15% over the course of a day that will switch. Maybe 2 questions, because I've got a Mets game. Does anybody know it's opening day? That's why I'm a little more casual today. Let's go Mets. How many Mets fans do we have here? I hope. Good. Over here.
In terms of the infrastructure, do you anticipate needing to use eminent domain?
No, not at all. Why would we do that? The infrastructure is not toll booths. It's all electronic. If you go to the congestion charging zone in London, the only way you'll know that you're there, the street looks the same except there's a C, a big C written in the pavement, and you would look up and you'd see cameras. And so in New York City, 91% of the people right now using the Tri-Bar Bridge and Tunnel Authority facilities are using E-ZPass. Those E-ZPass detectors are already up. You may not know them, but every 10 blocks or so in Manhattan, there's an E-ZPass detector, not to charge you, but to check your speeds, not to write a speeding ticket, but for the city to adjust the traffic signals. So the infrastructure for that is barely noticeable. The problem is going to be getting the cameras without putting up any kind of structures. London has done it, but some of the streets are not as wide. Where we have very wide streets, that's going to be a challenge. That's why I recommend the first phase be request for information on the best technologies that are out there. I predict there are already apps that you could pay tolls with. That'll be 91% or 90% will be E-ZPass, and some percentage will be license plate, and hopefully apps will take up the rest. And there will be a few cheaters that are out there. We have it today. Last question? Yes.
I just want to emphasize something I heard before. I've driven on these streets for 40 years. It's gotten worse the last 5 or 10. This is to raise funds for badly needed improvements, which I understand, bridges, transit, but its rationale for it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. We made the city very unfriendly for cars in the last 5 or 10 years. Whether it's bicycle, the medians have changed in the street, bus lanes being created. The natural outcome is going to be a slowing traffic pattern in New York. I don't attribute any of that to more cars. You probably have statistics to say there are more cars. However, it's been so unfriendly in New York, it really has slowed things down.
Well, good point. The status quo stinks. And what we're doing is we're going to change the status quo. And if you're at 4.7 miles an hour and dropping, we're going to move that up so that you have a better experience if you are a driver. That's fully one of the intents of this program. Okay, I really have to get to the game, so let me wrap up.